Good evening. Meeting of the Winthrop Town Council for October 21st, 2014 is now called to order. Would you please rise? Tonight we have some recognition of our local firefighters, and we're going to ask the two sons of Dennis Budrow, who's receiving one of the awards tonight, if it's Doug from the Lexington Department and Steve from the Sherborne Department, if they would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, gentlemen. Council Clerk Quist, would you please call the roll?
Council Callum. Present. Council Sanford. Council Boncory. Council Barone.
Here.
Council Terry.
Here.
Council Boyajian.
Here.
Council Mayo.
Here.
Vice President Dalbento.
Present.
President Gill.
Present. A quorum is present. We could just move on to a motion for the minutes for October 7th as circulated.
Motion.
Motion by Councilor Lettieri, seconded by Vice President Dalbento. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you. I'd like to introduce Chief Paul Flanagan, who would like to make a presentation regarding his department.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the department, I'd like to thank everybody who's here tonight for the council meeting and family members who might be here to, the firefighters who are going to be honored tonight. What's going to happen here is we're going to read a brief description of what went on June 30th, 2013 on Prospect Avenue. At the end, Council President Gill will give a council citation as one that was given from our representative, Speaker of the House, DeLeo, and we will also be awarding to the firefighters who are getting the award for the fire on Prospect and the other members who are attending their pins from the state of Massachusetts, which is given out in 5-year increments to career professional firefighters. As Chief, it gives me a great pleasure tonight to bring before you members of the Winthrop Fire Department to be recognized for their heroic efforts at a building fire that took place at 53 Prospect Ave. For those who do not know where Prospect Ave is, it runs perpendicular to the famous Winthrop Water Tower. First, I would like to acknowledge the invited guests, Valerie Dalton, who was one of the residents of the house that day, James Capobianco, and his son Tino Capobianco. Thank you for coming tonight and supporting the firefighters. At 8:25 in the morning of June 30th, 2013, a call was received for a building fire at 53 Prospect Ave. First arriving apparatus reported a heavy fire condition on the second floor of a 2.5-story wood frame house. As fire crews began to set up, they encountered a 97-year-old wheelchair-bound man on the first floor porch, Mr. Ralph Capobianco, Tino's grandfather. Firefighters removed this gentleman to the safety of the sidewalk across the street. As hose lines were stretched to the second floor, Tino and his father arrived home at the house for morning coffee and informed firefighters that Valerie, Tino's mother, was asleep on the third-floor bedroom. The fire had begun to take possession of the stairwell between the second and third floors. Proper placement of hose lines by members of this department cutting off fire spread allowed for firefighter Michael Lopez to make his way to the third floor and carry Valerie Capobianco to safety in a waiting ambulance. Tonight, we recognize the following members of the Winthrop Fire Department who together made this rescue possible under very difficult conditions. At this point, President Gill, I will read out the names. You will present the council citation as well as the council, the representative, House of Representatives citation from Speaker DeLeo. The first recipient is Captain William Wiley. He was the shift commander of Group 2 on that morning of June 30th. Captain?
As the I'm going to read the text. The text is the same in each one of these, so I'm going to read the text once from the council and once from the Speaker of the House. The Town Council, Town of Winthrop Town Council, be it known that the Winthrop Town Council hereby offers its appreciation to Captain William Wiley for your courageous acts on Sunday, June 30th, 2013, upon the arrival of a building fire at 53 Prospect Ave, of which you demonstrated both bravery and professionalism in your efforts to control a fast-moving fire and rescue of a resident trapped on the 3rd floor. On behalf of the citizens of Winthrop, we extend our sincere gratitude given this 21st day of October 2014 at Winthrop, Massachusetts, and signed by all the council. The Speaker also has presented each with a citation. Be it hereby known that the Massachusetts House of Representatives offers its sincerest congratulations to Captain William Wiley in recognition of your courageous acts, bravery, and professionalism in your successful efforts of the rescue of an individual trapped in a fire on June 30th, 2013. The entire membership extends its very best wishes and expresses the hope for future good fortune and continued success in all your endeavors. Again, thank you and congratulations.
Look this way, gentlemen.
Start down. Go down the end and just give a handshake all the way.
Thank you very much.
The gauntlet.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you very much. You get a double hit.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
And with his life-saving ribbon, he will get a state of Massachusetts pin for 23 years of service to the Winthrop Fire Department. Our second recipient, Dennis Woodrow.
Mr. Woodrow, look this way. One more, sir.
Thank you, Dennis.
Actually, if he starts this, I don't know where it works better. Thank you very much.
Double shake.
Shake.
And with his ribbon, firefighter Woodrow will receive his service pin for 30 years of service to the Winthrop Fire. Firefighter Daniel Lounder.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Look this way, sir. Mr. Gill. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Congratulations.
And Dan Lowney will receive his life-saving ribbon and his pin for 16 years service to the Winthrop Fire Department. Our next recipient was going to be Patrick O'Brien. He is currently in an 8-day FEMA class up in Beverly, getting certified in structural collapse. So our next firefighter is firefighter Richard Staff.
Congratulations.
Mr. Staff,
Thank you.
look this way, please, sir. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I'm glad you did. Congratulations. Thanks.
And last but not least, we have firefighter Michael Lopez.
Michael, congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Double hit.
There you go.
Michael Lopez will receive his life-saving ribbon and a pin for 7 years of service on the fire department. It's no coincidence that the seasoned firefighters held the fire back while the young legs went to the 3rd floor. One other member of the crew that didn't want to be here tonight because he didn't feel he was worthy was firefighter John Hayes, who was the fire alarm dispatcher that day. He said if he didn't send them, they never would have got there. But he didn't feel that he was worthy of these citations and the medals that these guys had. Again, I'm very proud to bring these guys in front of you. We operate in town. We keep a low profile. It's a coincidence today we're honoring these guys the same day that Speaker DeLeo won an award over at Mass General in Revere for his work against opiate overdoses. This fire department, after Representative DeLeo's opiate summit a little over a year ago, went out without any argument or any training. With any argument, we had our whole department trained in Narcan application. We have it on all our apparatus. And we're proud to say in a little over a year, we have 13 reversals in the town of Winthrop. We're not going to go as far as to say we saved 13 lives, because that's the way they are. We run under the radar screen. But we're only 1.6 square miles. We have our partners in medical care here, Action Ambulance. There's always 2 ambulances in Winthrop, so a lot of times our apparatus gets to the call the exact same time the ambulance does. And we opt to use their Narcan, and we give them credit for it. So in 1.6 square miles with 2 ambulances, this fire department has administered Narcan 12 times in 1 year. Again, they receive a round of applause. Yeah, Chief, and I hope the council is, and you've shown in your support with some of the things that you've given our department over the years. Very proud of these members, and I thank you for everybody who attended.
So ask the firefighters and the chief to come up behind the council table. Carrie would like to take a picture for the local paper. And the Budrow boys who are here in their honor of their dad come up too. Mrs. Capabianco.
Should we sit?
Thank you. I just want to take a second to acknowledge the chief for his leadership and to thank the families for their dedication along with the firefighters.
Personally thank once again my heroes, Winthrop firefighters, Group 2, William, Steve, Pat, Dan, Dennis, and Michael. I'm alive! Good to see you guys. I'm a mother, I'm a nurse, I'm an auntie, dog lover. I've taken care of addicts my whole nursing career. And I just don't know why I'm here now, because I'm still coming out of the fog. But you guys have given me a new life, and I can continue loving and be a good person because of you guys. You gave me life. I can't even tell you how much you mean to me. You'll always be my brothers and my sons and boyfriends and all of it. I love you guys, and thank you so much. And I often think, how can we get to the kids about the heroin problem? What are we going to do? What needs to be done? My idea, and I've talked to a few of you, is to have a winter firefighter calendar. So these kids can see you. That's why I said, I'm all booked. So these kids can look up every night before they go to bed and see real, true heroes, and have them have a message of what it takes to be a man and a hero. These are the people the kids have to emulate, okay? And these kind of men, family men, brave men, courageous men, these are what I want the young kids of today to see, these kind of people. And next year could be nurses, the week after, the year after, teachers, policemen, all of that. But we have to get the message out that this is what you want to be in your life. And these guys, I really want to get this done because I believe in you guys, and I believe kids can really benefit from looking up at you guys every night of their lives, you know, before they go to bed. And I just want to say that every time I see a fire truck, I say a prayer. And some days, I think I've said a whole rosary, how hardworking these firefighters are. And if anything, I think they deserve a raise.
We didn't tell us.
But they're hard work because they're the hardest working fire department that I've ever seen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Hey, Chief.
Can I just say a word?
Yes.
On her ending thing, that they deserve a raise, I will never complain about property taxes again. Because when that fire's there, you want your loved ones saved. And I didn't think the fire was going to be there, but it could happen to anyone. So I'm backing her 100%.
Thank you, Jimmy. Moving on tonight, sort of moving right off of what the fire department has talked about and what Speaker DeLeo had his little thing down in Revere today. I'd like to introduce Pat Milano and her backup people and have them make a little presentation for us about opiate abuse prevention.
Do you guys want copies of the slides?
Yeah.
Sure.
I have them electronically if anybody would like them. Anybody want them on their machine?
Email to town council.
Yeah, just, okay. Could you introduce your other?
Sure. Thank you for granting us some time this evening. My name is Pat Milano, and I'm the Coalition Director for Communities Against Substance Abuse. And with me this evening is Meredith Hurley, the Winthrop Board of Health Public Health Nurse, and Julia Newhall from Revere, who works for the City of Revere and who is the coordinator for the MOPSI grant. And the MOPSI grant is the Massachusetts Opioid Abuse Prevention Collaborative. We call our region, and we're a region of 4 communities, the ROC, which is the Winnisimmet Regional Opiate Collaborative. So we're here this evening just to provide you with some information and an update on a serious issue that we have in our community as well as communities across the region and across the Commonwealth, but just to update you and let you know what efforts are happening on that front. Tim, if you could put up the next slide. So, as I said earlier, we are the MOPSI grant. We use a lot of acronyms simply because it's a lot simpler than trying to, every time we talk about it, spell out what it is. So in each of the communities, and folks will explain that, we'll talk about how each of the communities are set up. So there are both regional work groups as well as local work groups. And at this time, I really would like to just take the opportunity to thank the people on the local Winthrop work group who helped work on this particular issue. And along with Meredith and Julia, Jean Maggio, Nancy Williams, Mary Lou Osborne, Brenda Curry, Judy Van Koyman, Police Chief Delahanty, the Fire Department, Joe Demilovich, Rose Mazzucchelli, Ron and Linda Vecchia, Leanna Ruzioni, Barbara Bishop, and Marianne Lonsbury. So there are a lot of people in our community that are committed to this effort and who really care about what's happening to the folks in our community. As well, we'll provide you with some updates about information that we were able to obtain through an assessment that we did at the beginning of this process, what some of the strategies are both locally and regionally. So I'm going to turn it over to...
Actually, if you could just click, because some of those I didn't point to listed on this, yeah. And so these were the objectives of the presentation, which Pat just gave you a pretty good background of the Massachusetts Opioid Addiction Prevention Collaborative, the Winnisquam Regional Opioid Collaborative, and CASA and the work group. We're going to give you, like she said, some state and local data updates and the ROC pilot strategies, which we've implemented this past year. And the next steps of what we're going to do next in addressing this issue. Go to the next slide, please. So to give you a background information, we are funded through the Bureau of Substance Abuse Services. The City of Revere was awarded the MOAPC grant in April of 2013. Prior to that, Winthrop, Saugus, Chelsea, right? Chelsea was involved. We had two regional summits, and Speaker DeLeo actually presented at one of the summits. So we had formed a relationship prior to being awarded this grant. And the purpose of this grant is to decrease opioid abuse and prevention, as well as fatal and non-fatal overdose. So that's funded by the Bureau of Substance Abuse Services, which is through the Mass Department of Public Health. Then we follow down to the ROC. So you can see there DPH, and then MOAPC, and then BZAP, which follows under the ROC. And then we have 4 different communities: Winthrop, Revere, Chelsea, and Saugus. And so what follows under there are 4 different local work groups. In Saugus, it's SUSA, which is Saugus United Against Substance Abuse. In Revere, it's Revere Cares Task Force. And in Chelsea, it's the Chelsea Leadership Team. The group, the ROC, is comprised of 2 regional members, a municipal member, and a coalition member from each community. So in total, 10 different people on the ROC. And then the way we structure it is so that we're working regionally. We get each of the local communities together trying to respond to this so that we can collaborate instead of working in silos, which we typically did before. Next slide. So Meredith and Pat are going to go over some of the state and local data.
So to go from a statewide perspective, we all know that opiate overdose has been pretty big in the news. So since 2005, the annual opiate-related overdose deaths have exceeded motor vehicle deaths, with a 90% increase in unintentional fatal opioid overdoses from 2000 to 2012. In 2012, 668 Massachusetts residents died from unintentional opioid overdoses, up 10% from the previous year. 40% of the people in fiscal year 13 that were receiving services through BSAS were only between the ages of 13 to 29. In March of this year, Governor Patrick declared the public health emergency and allotted $20 million towards this kind of work. So moving forward, we're hoping that this will make a bigger impact locally.
Locally, we've gathered information from the fire department, from the ambulance service provider, and through the Department of Public Health. So in the period from 2003 to 2012, the number of fatal overdoses here in Winthrop increased by 25%. So we saw an alarming increase in the number of overdoses that were happening, fatal overdoses that were happening here. And between January of 2012 and June of 2013, Action Ambulance reported 62 overdoses. Additionally, every 2 years, our coalition gathers data through the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, and we survey every single student in grades 6 through 12 every 2 years. And in the past report, which was done in May of 2014, so this year, 5% of the students surveyed at the high school claimed that they had used heroin at some point in their lifetime. So, needless to say, it's disturbing information. Additionally, in this slide, you're provided with sort of a breakdown of the local fatal overdoses, sort of breaking it down into age groups. All the information helps us make better decisions about how to deploy services and resources, or where are there gaps in resources that we need to fill. So as you can see as well, we've had a number of non-fatal overdoses. I think the thing that surprised me, and maybe most of the members of the local work group, and it was actually information that was similar across all the communities in the Rock, was that the majority of fatal overdoses were in the 45 to 64-year-old age group. I think that was surprising for most people to find out. We've done some brainstorming around why that might be the issue, whether those folks are tending to use more in isolation, where younger users maybe are using with other people. So, you know, it requires a lot of thought in terms of what's happening and how we respond to it. Next slide.
So in terms of the assessment that was done after seeing what a big problem this was, there was a 9-month assessment that was done during the first year. It included a leadership meeting at WCAT that I know some of you folks have been at, and then community meetings with residents at the senior center. So the goal was to kind of get feedback as to what was driving the problem here within Winthrop, because each community has different dynamics, different norms that are kind of affecting all of these things. So the major stakeholders were asked, what is the top priorities when it comes to opiate problems? Number 1 is availability. Number 2, mental health issues. And number 3 was the economy and low job opportunities. In addition, polysubstance abuse is a big thing. Most people, the gateway to this is overuse of prescription drugs. Going forward, you know, most people don't generally jump to heroin right away. There's a prescription drug that leads into it. Over prescribing of prescription drugs, children or kids, teenagers that think if they pop a Percocet, it's not a big deal. So that's what we're identified as the major problems leading towards it. Apathy towards active users, that the prescription drugs aren't harmful, and going forward with that, from there, different strategies were set forth that are now going to be worked on going into year 2, year 3. Next slide, please.
And so these would matter, just to kind of sum it up, the intervening variables are the factors that cause the problem. So we look at those intervening variables, which should give us a better understanding of how we should move forward with the different types of strategies based on best practice. So the accomplishments, part of the grant requirements was that we had to implement a pilot program. One of the pilots was the Narcan drop-in center. And so once a month in each community, and I believe Winthrop was Wednesday evenings, we had a drop-in center where people could come in and receive Narcan training and have access to Narcan. And so the reason we had it across all 4 communities was so that if somebody felt as though they didn't want to go to their local community because they were wanting to be confidential, they were able to go to their neighboring community and no information would be disclosed about that person within their community. And we had a lot of participants attend. Right now, the Department of Public Health is in a Narcan shortage, and so we've had to cut that off temporarily. But we think within the next couple months, they'll have more Narcan. And that goes to show that the supply is in high demand right now. The second pilot strategy, which was through the lead community, was the medication take-back day. And in Revere, we had a huge success in terms of medication. I think we received in total 100 pounds of prescription medication on our medication take-back day, which was in October. They had one in October and one in April, and it's ran by the DEA. So we try to align with the strategy on a national level. As was mentioned earlier, the Winthrop Fire carries Narcan. And both the police and fire have applied for a new grant through the Bureau of Substance Abuse Services, which is the naloxone grant. So it's a grant that is going to allow for additional funds for these first responders to carry Narcan. And a requirement of that grant is initiatives in opioid prevention and education services. So it really aligns with what we're trying to do on a regional level in terms of this grant. And in each of the communities, there's a 24/7 drug kiosk drop box where anybody can go in at any time and leave medications behind so that they're not sitting in medicine cabinets where kids can get their hands on them. Next slide. Okay, so our next set of strategies to address consumption of opioid misuse, which is the preventing first use from occurring. We have decided to develop a toolkit which will be implemented in year 1. The toolkit is a general access point to all kinds of information, tailoring to a wide audience of consumers. We want to focus on a number of different topics such as prevention, intervention, treatment, and recovery services. And so we found, based on the feedback of our assessment process, that there's lots of different information out there, but that it's not consistent and people are finding it in different areas. And this is a way for us to, create one access point where people can find information that's current and up to date, and really gives us a way to kind of bring who we are as a regional level into the communities by using this tool.
In addition, at the beginning of the month, we held a meeting to target really the community leaders of all 4 communities, fire, police, and school superintendents, to kind of get the conversation going across all of those departments to move forward with putting some education into schools and how best to develop that. And in addition, to make sure everybody is kind of on the same page, the best thing that came out of that was simply sitting down with these first responders and asking them, what do you see out there? What do you see is the biggest problem? We can look at the data and we can look at all of these things, but what are you seeing? And they're getting frustrated with going to the same house 4 times. They're frustrated with Narcan having to be used 2 and 3 times on the same person that they'd seen a few weeks before. There's no follow-up. That was the theme that we were getting was, we go out, we reverse, we do these things, but nobody's knocking on the door the next day. So that's what we're trying to focus, how best to have somebody there the next day, how best to get the resources out there to folks. That's where the gap really, from the first responders standpoint, is really showing up.
So a couple of the other strategies, and it segues right into what Meredith was just saying, are the peer educators and recovery coaches. The communities of Chelsea and Revere are fortunate to have institutional partnerships with Mass General Hospital, and Saugus and Winthrop don't have a health center or a hospital that provides support to them. So we really advocated strongly for peer educators and recovery coaches for the communities of Winthrop and Saugus. And so our hope is that as a part of this follow-up, that when whether it's the fire department, police department, or the ambulance service is called to a house to reverse an overdose, that some information is left and they're told that there'll be some follow-up, and these peer recovery coaches will really sort of meet people where they're at and meet them where they're ready to be met at. Sometimes folks, it takes a while for them to embrace recovery or to look for treatment, but we need to be out there and offering services and providing them with a path from where they are to someplace that's healthier. Additionally, the drop-in center, that group hasn't met yet, but we're hoping to expand the drop-in center access. Right now, Revere has drop-in hours every Tuesday over on Broadway, where they provide Narcan training, treatment navigation, peer recovery coaches, whatever folks need. So that's available there. And I think that sums up what we had prepared for you this evening. We're certainly willing to answer any questions you might have.
I have a question.
Linda, Councilor Keller?
Oh, okay, thank you.
Is there a limit to how many times that one particular family can, be administered that Narcan? I mean, if you're having one family that, seems to be, feels like that's a safety net, that they can, take the drug and then they know they can get this Narcan and it pulls them out of it. And then you have someone's in another property, another home, another family, and now you ran out of it and you don't have any for the other person. I mean, is there any way of monitoring that? It's like you only get it twice or once or twice and nothing like that.
Well, because, if we think of it in a way where we would think of somebody who needed insulin for diabetes, we wouldn't be able to put a cap on that. And so we try to treat addiction like any other disease in terms of that this is a medication that they need in order to, hopefully seek treatment. So really the goal of the Narcan isn't to steer them into recovery, but to give them an option so that they may be able to get into recovery. It's more about saving their lives in the harm reduction method rather than, trying to get them into some type of treatment.
Questions from, yes, Councilor Boyer.
With the next steps, I think you would use the words best practices. So these are all kind of evidence-based, based on, and I guess to go back to what Councilor Calla said, the approach you're taking with saving their lives and hoping they'll get recovery, is that an evidence-based thing that where it's more effective than trying to, I guess, having some sort of stipulation that they are forcibly made to enter recovery, or?
Right, well, that's more based on, I guess, a state and a federal level in terms of the type of policy.
So a policy versus evidence.
Exactly. But
okay,
in terms of being able to offer them this Narcan, research has actually shown that the amount of times that you administer Narcan doesn't, yes, exactly.
I guess to support what Councilor Calla was concerned, have there ever been any trials or randomization of, the Narcan only versus, I don't know what you want to call it, but more of a aggressive approach towards recovery, forcible recovery, for lack of a better term?
And there's no one way of looking at this. It's a multifaceted issue, and kind of how this is broken up into consequence versus consumption. We have to look at this in full spectrum.
Sure.
That there's so many different factors that relate to this beyond just the everyday types of issues that these people are facing, but looking at more like socioeconomic status. From our standpoint on what we're trying to do from a regional standpoint, it's really bring our resources together so that we're able to better serve our communities in terms of this particular issue.
No, I completely agree. I guess I'd be interested to know if there is any evidence in regards to support the policy.
A doctor from Mass General did a study in terms of Narcan, and it showed that those who have had Narcan were more likely to get into treatment rather than the opposite of that. I think his name is Dr. White. I can look up the reference for you and maybe give it to Pat and have her send it to you guys if that's helpful.
Thank you. Any further questions from the council? If not, I thank you for the education you've given us tonight, although I think it's an issue that's been kind of pushed aside and it needs to be brought to light, and not only the education you gave us, but your plans for moving forward.
Well,
and you're very lucky to have Speaker DeLeo and live in this community. He's been a huge advocate of this. So.
Yeah, he was very well recognized today as an advocate of that things wouldn't be at the stage they are now in a positive direction. I mean, not negative. Had it not been for his support. Councilor Calla.
I just wanted to say that Pat Milano, this isn't new. I mean, Pat has been fighting this battle for, at least 10 years?
It's closer to 20.
Is it 20? Is it 20? Well, I'm just saying, very actively since I've been on the council and then prior to that. So it is something that is epidemic.
Right, it is, and our hope is that, we need to meet everybody where they are. Certainly prevention, when they talk about an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. I mean, certainly, money spent to increase awareness on education and on helping young people make healthy and good choices is money well spent. But we need to meet people where they are, and as Julia was saying, sometimes you know, it's reversing that overdose multiple times. I'm struck by a story that we heard at one of the forums held at Kowloon, and it was a young man who was 21 years old. And he was telling the crowd that he had been reversed probably 13 or 14 times. He was 21. So, but he was now in recovery, and he was, you know, giving back to his community by going, you know, to public meetings and speaking and talking about the value of, you know, Narcan and how it saved his life and how, you know, it's now allowed him to lead a more productive life. And so, you know, sometimes you need to get to
It's a good story.
yeah, to a dark place before you can see the light. So.
Right.
And we don't often hear those good stories.
I know.
You know, and that's partly, you know, the reason why it's difficult and it's discouraging after 20 years of doing this work. It's everybody has their days where it seems like it's a never-ending issue.
Councilor Del Vento.
One thing that I think, if there's one thing that I would like to stand out in everybody's mind is the demographic. People don't realize that this is amongst every age group. I mean, the non-fatal overdoses is almost spread across the board. Fatal overdoses are actually 45 and higher is the biggest group. And if you look at the full demographic, socioeconomic income, race, gender, the whole, it's right across the board. So it's not what people typically picture as your heroin addict. And that's where I think some of this research is finally shedding light that it's in every community, it's at every age group, and it's not just, granted we need to do a lot of work with the kids and keep them going in the right direction, but it's in every age group, and that's why a lot of the outreach that's been going on is starting to target the whole spectrum as opposed to just what you would think would be the bad areas.
Right.
Thank you. Councilor Boyage.
I was just wondering, I know you said next steps, but in a few years, where do you see this going, I guess, in the collaborative? Or where do you hope it would go?
What I hope?
Pie in the sky.
Yeah, I mean, I hope that we have a lot more resources here available locally for the people in our community, that we've educated them better, that we've raised awareness about the problem, and that we've made, you know, inroads into this issue. That people will realize that using a medication correctly versus you know, not using it correctly can lead to some pretty serious consequences. And, you know, like I say, I hope to have the people and the resources here that can help the residents of our community. I don't know about...
I was just having this conversation yesterday in an interview actually, and I would say my major goal in terms of this work is to really try to decrease the stigma around addiction and to bring more awareness to the fact that, as you were saying, this is something that affects all families, that nobody is immune to this. And no amount of money, the color of your skin, where you put your kids into school, it doesn't matter. It doesn't make a difference. And that we have to understand that this can happen to anybody in our families, and to empathize with the situation at hand and deal with it as sensitively as possible, because this is really difficult for families. And no one knows how to deal with this when this nightmare comes knocking at your door.
Okay, thank you.
I appreciate your attention tonight.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you again to Pat, Meredith, and Julia for your presentation and for your time. Thank you again. Moving on, we have a public hearing scheduled tonight, and I will open the public hearing at this point. And the purpose of the public hearing is a request by the town manager that the town appropriate $854,911.16 from the premium paid to the town upon the sale of bonds issued for the purposes of paying costs for the so-called middle high school building project fund 856, which bonds are the subject of a Proposition 2.5 debt exclusion to pay the cost of the project being financed by such bonds, and to reduce the amount authorized to be borrowed for such project, but not yet issued by the town by the same amount, or take any other action relative thereto. Is there anybody that would like to speak in favor of this proposal? Mr. McKenna.
Yes, a bond premium is paid as a consequence of an auction for bonds. and we had some favorable assistance from First Southwest, and I think given the strength of the town's improved financials, we were able to secure both a favorable interest rate as well as a fairly substantial bond premium. It's been the advice of CFO Gordon and others to see that this be utilized to reduce the overall cost of the debt of the school project. Since this is a debt exclusion vote, this is purely a win for the taxpayer. None of the residual of our bond efforts comes to the town or to the general fund. It's straight to the taxpayer. So this ought to be something that goes back to the taxpayer as well, which is to reduce the overall spread of the debt. And so we'll apply this, and that'll reduce how much we have to ask for.
That will reduce by this amount, $854,000, the amount that we'll need to borrow when we complete the project and go through the next round of borrowing. So we really only have two options with this money. You can either do what we're proposing here, or you can put it in a reserve account and restrict it to paying the debt service on the school project over the course of 25 years. But if you do that, you need to borrow more, so you're paying more interest. So it really doesn't. This is really the recommended approach.
So this is a result of an improved bond rating or improved credit rating, and some working with interest rates and some diligence on the whole package that is now saving us $854,911.
It's standard practice to receive a premium when going out to borrow. It attracts potential buyers of the bond, and this is probably the most preferable way to receive and use that premium.
Okay, anyone else want to speak in favor? If not, we'll close that side. Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition to it? If not, we'll close that side. Is there any question or comment from the council?
Mr. President?
Yes, Council Vice President.
The Council Finance Committee had scheduled a meeting on this, but we were unable to come to a time frame we could do it. So we will be holding a meeting in the Finance Committee on this before our next council meeting, so we'll ask that this any vote of action be postponed until our next meeting, so that we're in compliance with all our requirements.
Is there any further discussion from the council? If not, we'll close the hearing. Thank you very much, and we'll move on to public comment. Public comment. Seeing none, we'll move on to...
Can I just get the update?
Yes.
Because I have to go to that.
Yes.
At the October 15th board meeting, there's been some chatter about co-digestion. A couple of the things that were due to come up to a vote that didn't because they were tabled due to missing members of the board were to allow the executive director of the Mass Port to talk to the director of the Massachusetts Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs to recommence on the pilot program referring to co-digestion at Deer Island. That was one of them. For the executive director to amend a contract with Waste Management to barge up to 28 dry tons a day rather than the original no-cost contract they had in trucking slurry to winter. For the executive staff to move forward with procurement of professional services for the design of a permanent co-digestion facility which would expedite the operation of the permanent plant. It had been determined that in the state of Massachusetts, there's 6 wastewater plants with anaerobic digestion. Out of the available space in these 6 plants, the MWRA has 87% of the capacity. Funding for the barge pilot adds an additional $2.3 million to the cost of the pilot program, which $1.9 million will come from state environmental agencies, Office of Environmental Affairs, Mass Department of Energy, Mass DEP. But again, what was happening, because they've gone to the barging program, again, Waste Management wanted their contract extended a couple more years, and they will barge it free of cost, but they want to barge larger quantities. And so what they're going to do is, just on layman's terms, if you do the island walk, starting on the Euro Beach side, when you get out on the back, before you get to what they call the big gas bags and the digesters, there's a couple of low to the ground, sometimes very sinful, they call those gravity thickeners, and they're going to use one of those that they don't use for storage for the slurry. With all this being said, questions were asked, why are we having a pilot program if we know this is a slam dunk financially for the island? The reason is they have to come up with a recipe. You have to know how much goes in, how to maximize your gas, so it is very advantageous to have a pilot program. So with that, it was all tabled. It probably will come up again next meeting. The advisory board, which initially is a board that looks out for ratepayers, they were against co-digestion in the beginning. I attended a meeting this Friday at the MAPC in Temple Place in Boston, and the whole conversation was just on co-digestion with people from all over the state, and the lady was from outside of Massachusetts speaking on it, and they were all the advisory board. Now everybody is on board with co-digestion. The thing that you have to know is that there will be no trucks associated with co-digestion as far as lugging slurry in. The other topic that was discussed on Friday was Ebola as it relates to the sewer system. I mean, ultimately everything winds up in winter, but the underground sewer workers who are always raking the screens trying to grab baby wipes and everything else prior to them getting to Deer Island, they were concerned with their proximity to the Beth Israel, the Mass General, and all the major hospitals in Boston. A person from the department, the DPH, was there, and they said, and again, it always seems like they're going back and forth with Ebola. One good thing about the Ebola virus is it lives for a very short time, very few moments in the sewer system. There's every other thing in the sewer system, but Ebola was not one of them. So with that, the ban for any institution disposing of 1 wet ton a month is now has to have theirs done. In the MWRA, in the pilot program, is still looking at $2 million for the pilot program of additional profits or savings to the MWRA. With when the full program is in effect, it should exceed $5 million a year.
Thank you,
So,
Chief.
that's it.
Question, Council?
So I'm not sure I'm straight on all of this thing. So there were 2 things that they were going to vote on the other day.
3
things. Okay, you went quick on those. So I'm
All right.
not
One of them was to
that.
give the executive director of the MWRA permission to talk to the executive director of Energy and Environmental Affairs of Massachusetts to commence on the pilot program using the barge. Number 2.
So that's not approved yet?
Everything was tabled. There was no vote
I
tabled.
understand. So right now, they couldn't barge it if they wanted it?
That is correct.
Just for clarification, we are in public comment.
Yeah.
If it's the wish of the council to move ahead to the manager's report in order to incorporate this as part of the manager's report, just so
Can I
that we're
just
not...
repeat the 3 things so for him, Mr.
Go ahead.
The second thing was for the executive director to amend the contract with Waste Management for a barging contract versus the original trucking contract. And then for the executive staff to move forward procuring professional services for the design of a permanent co-digestion facility. And the reasoning for this was to expedite the building of a permanent plant. And again, there was a couple of words that started a little bit of a firestorm, that detrimental effects to the plant. The only way that the island could back out of a contract with Waste Management would be if it was a success and they went in a different direction, or there was a detrimental effect to the island. And the only thing that they have come up with their studies that is a negative on the whole co-digestion, it's a little tongue twister, project, was they figure it will produce 15% more pellets at the Quincy end. And the pellets are pumped underground to Quincy. So as the solids that are no longer being used or producing gas are leaving Deer Island, they're being pumped out to Deer Island. And with co-digestion, I figure there'll be 15% more solids being pumped to Quincy.
So, thank you, Chief. Any further discussion?
Yeah.
We will have to amend, we will have to suspend the agenda, move to the manager's report from public comment. And public comment is comment only. So if it's the wish of the council to move ahead to the manager's report, we will. Otherwise, we will hold those comments until the manager's report. However, the chief has to leave to go to another meeting. What's the wish of the council? Hearing no motion, we will. Council Mayor?
I have a couple more. It seems like a pretty effective conversation to do.
Council Mayor, we have been instructed that public comment is comment.
All right, so how do we move this so we can have the discussion?
We will, if you want to make a motion to suspend the agenda and move to the manager's report, Chief Flanagan can speak under the manager's report.
Well, I'd like to do that.
Councilor Mail is making a motion that we suspend the agenda and move to the manager's report.
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Boyage. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you. Go ahead, Chief. Go ahead, Councilor.
Okay. So, all right, so Waste Management was going to truck the stuff for free.
Right.
On a trial one-year contract. And
With
now,
2 one-year extensions.
With 2 one-year extensions. Now, because they have to invest in a barge or figure out another way, they want 3 years to do it. So we're buying a 3-year project for this, regardless of this.
Well, they don't feel the pilot program will go 3 now because they have, now that it's going to be a 5-baffled barge. You know, the pilot program, only the aft and forward baffle will have slurry in it. The reason Waste Management wanted the additional years is they're making their money on the tipping fees, the pickup and tipping fees.
Yeah.
They just need a place to bring it. So with that, now that it's a bigger project, and again, it's $2.3 million for the barge and other accessories to make it all work, that's why they wanted the extended contract to cover their costs.
And is the barge meaning that they're going to bring in that much more, mean they're going to have to store it outside where they wouldn't have had to before?
No, I told you that as you walk the island, prior to getting to the 2 gas bags and the eggs, there's 3 little low 12-foot high domes, if you will, or igloos. Those are called gravity thickeners. They're going to free up 2 of those, and that's where the slurry would be stored, so they could empty the barge. They're only figuring during the pilot program, due to the volume they're bringing and the capability of the barge, there would only be 2 barges a week.
2 barges a week.
2 barges a week.
And that replaces the 50 trucks a week.
That replaces, you're right, no trucks.
No trucks, other than the trucks that would be required to handle the rest of the excess work going on there, because excess work would be going on there, so.
All of the only thing they have to do in order to facilitate the pilot barging program is to build a pipeline from the pier to the eggs, their anaerobic digesters, which they plan on doing all in-house.
They're going to do that in-house. And just one more thing, Rich. And they wouldn't start any of this now until they got the pier done. But who supervises the boat and all that to make sure that, you know?
Waste Management project.
So they're responsible for it if it leaks, if it drips, if it drops.
It's all Waste Management. All of the soundings and everything at Deer Island have been done. There's adequate water at the pier for the barge.
Thank you. And thanks for
Councilor Biaggi.
having that discussion.
No, that's great. So there, so there wouldn't be any trucking through, additional trucking with that. What about, are there any chemicals or other additives that are needed to make the slurry that would be required to be trucked in?
The recipe is what goes down
all
the
in-house, it'll
island
be
now
barged.
with the nutrients. And in this meeting Friday, they were even talking that the recipe will change seasonally with the vegetables that are being.
Okay, so no trucks would be required to support the barging?
No.
Okay. Thank
Any
you.
further questions?
Just one more.
Councilor Mayor.
One more question. Those 12, those 3 droplets or whatever you called them there, were they going to be used before, or was the stuff not coming in fast enough before?
What do you mean the droplets?
You know those, you said that the
No, because they were going to bring in much smaller amounts.
So they weren't going to need that?
They didn't need that. Now, in order to make it worthwhile in a barge, you know, because again, we're talking tipping fees and pickup fees. Once it gets to the slurry plant, they need a place to put it.
All right, thanks.
Councilor Biaggi.
One more follow-up. So in these little igloos things, they're going to store the stuff. Are there assurances that nothing will be stored outside of that as far as?
No, there is no tank. In the final, in the complete build-out, there will be a storage tank, because it will go from 28 dry tons.
But would they leave containers outside of those? Okay.
Any further questions for the chief so he can leave? If not, we'll revert back to public comment.
Thank you.
Yes. Just identify.
Manning, 9 Elliott Street.
Just precinct.
Precinct, thank you. Precinct
3.
3.
3,
Thank
yeah.
you. These are for the chief. Am I allowed to do that? Because it's actually what he's talking about. Okay.
Not really. You can leave it.
I would just like to know if it was actually on what Councilor Bojan said, if the storage tanks were going to be covered, the items that were going to be stored, and B, the methane gas that is going to be produced down there, if it's going to be used as it's produced, or if that's going to be stored as well.
I will allow the chief to.
Well, as of right now, they do not have a lot of capacity. There'll be no more storage down Deer Island. When they go to the permanent slurry facility, permanent co-digestion, the talk is that they will build a gas-driven turbine to generate 78% of the electricity on Deer Island. Right now, they use 20 million a year. The truth of the matter is, as Don brings comment to, there's a flare out in Deer Island. And right now, the only time they ever light that flare is when they shut down one of their 2 high-pressure steam boilers, which heat the eggs. So basically, they can use every drop of gas that they make, unless they shut one of the big steam boilers down. If they do, they may, in the summertime, never in the winter, because they provide all of the heat for the eggs, as well as all of the buildings, they may have to flare some gas in the summer.
Okay, thank you.
So, I'm sorry, I didn't get I don't know if I got the answer. Are they going to store the methane gas?
There will be really no more methane storage.
So they're just going to use it as they produce it?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Any further public comment? If not, moving on to correspondence. We had a correspondence from Copeland and Page regarding a open meeting law complaint, and I will read the correspondence from them, which they have referred to Mr. David Osborne, 474 Pleasant Street. He was the person who made the complaint, and it was regarding the open meeting complaint. Dear Mr. Osborne, as you know, this office serves as town attorney for the town of Winthrop. This letter is in response to a correspondence that you sent to the Winthrop Town Council on or about July 27, 2014. As you know in your correspondence, you seek copies of executive session minutes as well as all documents used at said executive sessions for February 4, February 2014, February 11, 2014, February 18, 2014, March 4, 2014, March 11, 2014, April 1, 2014, and June 17, 2014. You also seek copies of the meeting minutes for the special town council meetings held on April 18th, April 30th, and May 23rd of 2014. The Town Council received an extension from the Division of Open Government to respond to your July 27th request by October 13th, 2014. I am responding on the Council's behalf. Under the Massachusetts law, the Town Council is not required to disclose the minutes, notes, or other materials used in executive session, where the disclosure of such records may defeat the lawful purposes of the executive session. Only when disclosure will no longer defeat the purposes of the executive session must the minutes and other records from executive sessions be disclosed, unless they fall within an applicable exemption to the Public Records Law, General Law, Chapter 4, Section 7, Clause 26, the attorney-client privileges applies. See General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 22F, see also General Law, Chapter 4, Section 726A, exempting records that are specifically, or by necessary implication, exempted from disclosure by the statute. As an initial matter, the meeting minutes for the April 18th, April 30th, May 23rd special council meetings were approved by the council on August 19th, 2014, and are available on the town's website and it gives the address. With respect to your request for the minutes of the executive sessions held on February 11th, 18th, March 4th, March 11th, March 17th, June 17th, all of 2014, these minutes were reviewed at the August 19th Town Council meeting in executive session, and after deliberation by the council, it was determined that disclosure of said minutes at this time would defeat the lawful purpose for which the council entered into the executive session on said dates. Be advised that the Town Council shall regularly review said minutes to assess when disclosure would be appropriate. I've enclosed a copy of the Town Council's August 19th, 2014 minutes for your review. I further note that while the Town Council posted meetings for February 4th, April 1st, 2014, as I understand the Town Council did not actually hold executive sessions on February 4th or on April 1st, 2014. It did not meet or hold an executive session on February 5th, 2014. Accordingly, said executive sessions did not occur, therefore there are no minutes available for those meetings. I have enclosed copies of February 4 and April 1 meeting minutes for your review and your records. As I previously advised you, the Town Council has and will continue to diligently strive to meet all the requirements of the open meeting law. In addition, please note that the Town Council recently completed training on the open meeting law requirements with Town Attorney on September 16, 2014. Pursuant to the requirements of the Attorney General's open meeting law regulations, I am forwarding a copy of a complaint in this response to the Attorney General's Office, Division of Open Government. Very truly yours, Elizabeth Lane. There are no further communications, correspondences, so I move on to committee reports, and economic development is on the agenda. Mr. Sanford is tied up on a travel hold-up that he got on the way back due to weather. So we will move on to the Finance Committee. Councilor Del Vento.
The Finance Committee had several items before it. We were unable to have a Finance Committee meeting between our last meeting and our meeting tonight. And I will, during old business, be asking that the Council Finance Committee be released of its duty to hold a hearing for all these for all the items $20,000 or less, which should not require advertising or hearings, to be voted on tonight if the council so wish. But the $854,000 middle school, high school bond motion will have a hearing in the next week or two prior to our next meeting for vote.
Okay, moving on to the Town Manager's report. Mr. McKenna.
Good evening. I'm pleased to report, and some of you were in attendance on Thursday afternoon when we were visited by East Boston Neighborhood Health Center representatives, as well as Massport representatives, and our representative Robert DeLeo and Senator Petroselli. And there was a presentation made last Thursday at 1 o'clock, which was quite important. And I wanted to remind the council and the public that Massport presented East Boston Neighborhood Health Center with a grant of $175,000 dedicated to assisting youth asthmatic conditions in Winthrop. And it's an impressive first step, as it was noted, to develop a program customized to the needs of the town of Winthrop and its youth with respect to asthma and what families can do to address asthmatic conditions among our youth. And you know, the presentation, I think, really was a good first step on the part of Massport, I believe, in recognizing that the report drafted by the Commonwealth with respect to air quality from Logan Airport indeed is impactful. And I think that, you know, Massport understands that it needs to maintain and support a strong partnership with Winthrop and other surrounding communities impacted by the air quality that emanates from Logan Airport. And so I think it was a very good gesture on the part of Massport to do that first step. In that meeting, we were pleased to learn that East Boston Neighborhood Health Center announced that it will be locating a facility in Winthrop, and that it is guaranteeing that they move to Winthrop and provide general practice health medicine in the town of Winthrop. And so that's a great commitment that they've now committed to for the community. And in particular, they're excited to focus their practice on youth and pediatric medicine. And so two very important pieces of information were obtained on Thursday, and it really looks good for the town to finally start to address a very gaping need for this community, which is general care, health care in the community, and access to good health care. So I'm pleased to see that East Boston Neighborhood Health Center has reconsidered and will relocate to Winthrop. They haven't determined a location at this point, but we understand that they are aggressively seeking the right location and working with local commercial property owners to identify an appropriate site. Also last week we had the opening of the Dalrymple Apartments under the auspices of the East Boston Community Development Corporation. It was a great event. We've all lived through the experience of the Dalrymple School and its transformation to now a nice facility for senior housing. And it's really a capstone and credit to this council for what you've all been doing to encourage an appropriate reuse of that building, and now really bringing a wonderful enhancement to a neighborhood that has long suffered with a real question mark of what's going to happen with that facility. And if you've had a chance to walk through it, really it's a wonderful job that they've done restoring the property, and using it as they have. It makes perfect sense. So it was exciting to be there, and I know a number of councilors were there. Councilor Gill and Councilor Cowell were there. Winthrop Hospital, Arbor Apartments continues to progress. We understand, however, that there's been a need to delay the move-in of the patients or residents there due to continuing construction responsibilities of the property developer. And so it looks like the official opening will be more on the side of January of next year, is what I'm understanding is where they peg opening.
They're hoping sooner. The developer has put a fast special order on the stuff that needs to be put in, so hopefully by the end of December, but not for sure.
And I have included in your Dropbox a draft town public space rental and use agreement as a matter of information. It's in development right now, and it's merely a draft as it goes along with the request that I put in to adopt standard policy for all the use of town spaces. It seems that there's been a bit of a checkerboard sort of response over the years in terms of how people use our spaces, particularly in buildings such as this and the senior center and now the ferry terminal building. So we wanted to just get our hands around the whole issue and decide on a singular policy that would, we all could apply to the various town buildings and be comfortable with it. So I'm asking for you to review this, refer it out to rules and ordinances if you deem appropriate, and in the process we'll fine-tune and establish a final use policy for all town buildings, consistent with the schools. The schools already have one in place, and I think it's time for us to have something that's a companion policy for town buildings.
The schools and the housing authority both have them.
Right.
Council?
Just one question, Jimmy. For the policy, as the town manager, you have care and custody control of all the buildings, which I don't want to be like the school committee have to vote every time
Right.
somebody wants to have a
No,
car wash.
no.
Do we need to vote to set the rates?
That's precisely why I'm forwarding it to you,
Okay,
because
so-
there would be fee involved for basic utility and janitorial expense. And-
But you draw the policy, we
Yes,
just set the rates.
right.
So issued permits and all that?
Right.
Okay.
So does it need to go to rules and ordinances, or?
Yes, because it's a fee that
Yeah,
has
okay.
to be established in ordinance.
Can I?
Yes, go ahead.
So you have $125, but then you have 60 and 75.
Yeah,
is that-
we broke it into two categories, one for nonprofits and one for for-profit use. Some of our facilities are used by folks who are marketing their goods and services, and we feel that's certainly, the properties are available for gaining some revenue, but we didn't want to treat nonprofits under the same light as for-profit entities.
What I don't understand is if you decide to rent out the ferry terminal, $75, that's it?
Yes, however, under that fee, you agree to clean up after yourself, okay?
So see, what I don't understand is, it's $125 to rent one of the town buildings
Right.
that has a custodian in it.
Yeah.
Okay? And it's $75 to rent these others. It doesn't seem like 4 hours, $75, it doesn't seem like a large fee, and I'm concerned about...
It's not a large fee. I mean, feel free to propose something
It's not
different.
important.
We're paying for the cost of the building. We're not looking to, gouge nonprofits and others
All
who are trying to, who have traditionally used the buildings for free
But-
up until now.
So hypothetical, because I think that the ferry terminal, you could have a wedding down there and $75, and then I just don't know if we have enough safeguards around it, because when you have a building and the custodian is there is going to lock up the ferry terminal, who's going to have to. I think it's a great idea. I just don't think we're getting a fair shake for it.
Again, we aren't anticipating weddings at the ferry terminal building. It's not set up for commissary, type of facilities and whatnot. It's a large room, but it's certainly not.
Harbor Master
I also think that the manager has the prerogative to adjust the fees. I don't think it's a set fee, but I also...
You have to vote the fee.
Right, but there are different fees for different...
Yes, right.
Council Boyer.
Is there something with the buildings that aren't going to have janitorial? Would that be something where we require a deposit or something like that that's refunded once?
Certainly, we can ask for that. I mean, we're doing it based on our real experience. And we have a number of nonprofit groups in town who are really just scraping by, and we're not looking to set a policy that puts them out of business, essentially.
I have no problem with the nonprofit. I'm only thinking that, I think you could get a wedding down there. The place is a sharp-looking opera. I went to a wedding out on an island a couple of weeks ago. They had nothing. We have a ton of staging space there. Somebody could come in. They had a pig roast and very fancy event there. It's a beautiful spot. I don't know why somebody wouldn't want to. You got to think.
Again, this is a draft, so feel free to propose any
Draft up those
amendments.
prices.
Yeah, that can be aired out in front of rules and ordinances. Continue on.
Yes. And now I'd like to discuss a bit of good news that we've heard this week from the Department of Revenue. Its year-end review of fiscal 14 for the community was a good report to receive, given the fact that when I came to Winthrop, fiscally the town was in a very different place. And today, to see how far we've come is quite remarkable for this community. Under the rubric of a recession, the town has been an outlier, frankly, and has defied recessionary trends and has strengthened its fiscal footprint. And it's a collaboration of effort among many. The council, obviously, who adopt and appropriate, the school committee, the administration, the financial offices of the town, the departments, who all have contributed in their own ways significantly to this result. And the result today, I'm pleased to report, is a free cash balance in excess of $2.3 million for the close of $2.2 million for the close of fiscal 14, and that is a historic record for the community. It speaks well of the disciplines and the dedication that we have all participated in bringing this to the town. And I'd like Tim Gordon to just review a brief history of free cash, and concomitant with that, we've overlaid on a graph how our stabilization fund has been the recipient of the value of this effort, and will continue to be, given the policies that this council has adopted last year. And then we'll talk about how this translates into nourishment of the various stabilization accounts that the town council has established for appropriate capital and building maintenance attention, as well as just reaching the goal of a 5% balance of a stabilization fund is really truly a mark of a turnaround for this community. And so with that, I'll ask Tim to just review how we got here and unpack for you, the basic elements of how this free cash developed. Tim?
So as Jim said, the general fund free cash was $2.2 million. I just want to go over the enterprise fund free cash as well. Water enterprise fund retained earnings was certified at $394,000. Sewer was $558,000. Waterway was $264,000, and the rink enterprise was $79,000. Recreation was $42,000. The free cash to the general fund of $2.2 million, sort of the breakdown of that, it kind of falls into three categories. First, there was $200,000 remaining in there from the close of fiscal year 14, so that gets incorporated into the total. About a little over $300,000 of the $2.2 million was a result of end-of-year turnbacks where departments did not spend all of their budget.
So let's pause on that point. Well, many people think, oh, you didn't budget, right. Well, the fact is, no. We did budget well in terms of expenditures. That as a remaining balance of the year reflects less than 1% of unexpended funds. Okay, so we always want to end up on the bright side of the road here, and how we finish the year on expenses. And we should traditionally see, $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 of remaining balance going forward as an operating retained earning. Go ahead. Yeah,
and a lot of that $300,000 is health insurance. Health insurance is tricky because you add 1, 2, or 3 people, it's about $18,000 to $20,000 a year per person. So. We have open enrollments. You have people out there that may be on a spouse's plan. So we kind of budget, not worst case scenario, but we're very conscious of how that line item is very sensitive because of that fluctuation based on just a few people. The remaining over $1.5 million is from our revenues coming in over the estimates. And $230,000 of that was from aggressive tax lien revenue coming in based on
235.
Well, between tax liens and 228. Real estate and personal property beyond budgeted was over $100,000, $102,000. Motor vehicle excise was $450,000 over what was estimated, and others are penalties and interest. Licenses and permits were $240,000. So it's made up of from a number of different sources, most of which is coming from our local receipts. So that's sort of the breakdown of the $2.2 million. Just a couple of reminders. I just want to remind the council they had back in January, I believe, adopted a a policy or a guideline on the distribution of free cash. So perhaps at a future meeting, you may want to have that on the agenda for discussion purposes and for dealing with the distribution of this free cash here. And another reminder is when we did, if you recall, when we did the FY14 budget, there are a number of capital items that we sort of did not include in the budget, but had some intention of bringing them back up for discussion once free cash was certified. So I was going to recommend that the Capital Improvement Committee meet at some point to go over that the 5-year capital plan again and identify the items that we may want to be considering for this year.
We've included the capital plan again in your Dropbox for review, and we will develop a memorandum on the items that, while they were looked at as very favorable to be funded in FY14, they didn't make the cut in terms of the final resolution budget. And so I will be proposing that those be reconsidered for funding for the next council meeting.
Thank you. Council Mayor?
So I know we had some fees associated with the 3 big projects that went on. Will the amount of annual tax revenue generated by those be more or less than the amount of the fees that hit the books this year?
I don't know, we'd have to look at the properties and see what they're assessed at. I think you're making the point of there might be some one-time revenue in here.
I'm just wondering. Well, you know, you talked about the dice on rolling the dice on the health, so you won there. But you know, those tax liens are a one-time. Theoretically, I mean, I know they go back on, but there's some accumulation of a couple of years there.
Just to put a sort of a parenthesis around this, part of the 1.165 in local receipts excess was 245,000 in building and permit fees. If we were to acknowledge that this year was a banner year for us in terms of construction in town, you know, we could take a measure of that and say, you know, that's probably represents a good, you know, a piece certainly of that. I can't give you a specific figure, but what should happen is that we see new growth respond as a measure of assessed value, and that becomes permanent.
That's what I was actually asking. You take in 100 in upfront fees. Are we going to have 100 to balance it off because those are now on the books as taxable properties? You know, balance out there.
I'm just pointing out the fact that this is excess one-time revenue.
Yeah.
The assessments, obviously, as you know, are permanent. So
well, that's what I'm hoping for. You
know. Would you expect with the establishment of the health inspectors and the inspection department that may actually grow in regards to revenue from their inspections and things like that? And the other part was back to the health. I guess I'm concerned that I don't know how the implementation of the Affordable Care Act in January will affect the health insurance for this town in regards to, I don't know if we qualify for the expenditure of that tax that will be levied upon certain health insurances and things like that.
We are under the GIC,
yeah,
and so I think that we're in better positioned, I think, relative to general policy, having been in the GIC now, and that will continue for another 4 years.
Is there an expected significant increase with the implementation?
This year alone, GIC rates went up only by 1%.
And we haven't been informed that it was an oncoming train, but I'm sure that a lot of that will be worked out at the state level. I think that there are some budget gaps in the state budget that have to be addressed on that front. So remains to be seen how it all washes out.
Any further questions for the town manager? I just want to, in that last item, commend you and Tim, Citizens Finance Committee, all of the department heads for the preparation and for the management of the budget, along with the aggressive collection methods that you guys took that caused this, created this free cash number. Council Biaggi.
I'm sorry, one more question. I actually wanted you to kind of reiterate again why it's important for us to have the reserves that we do versus operating, I'll call it, on a more shoestring budget that may have been done in the past. That well, why is that important? Just for the general public.
Yeah, and it's a great point, and it can't be stated enough, I think. We've lived through and learned well that, you know, there can be at any moment an unforeseen event that really stresses our finances. So you need to have you know, some hedge against unforeseen events, as well as, you know, in order to be given the volatility in some expenses. As we know, health insurance and some other fixed costs, 28% of our operating budget, you know, as labor aside, is fixed cost driven. And any volatility in there can really, like fuel or anything, can really stress our finances. And so it's important to have stabilization funds for that very point, to be able to stabilize and continue to, you know, operate without, you know, too much of a negative effect from unforeseen events.
Did this benefit us in any way in our borrowing ability, yes, or did it save us money?
Absolutely. Well, it's hard to say if it actually. We got a very favorable, right. Let's give the devil his due. We're in a favorable rate environment right now. But we certainly lost the negative outlook comment on our bond rating, and I think, you know, Wall Street is pleased generally, and very positive, you know, comments, you know, in our prospectus here on our debt, that you know, the town is moving forward in the right direction, and who couldn't acknowledge the fact that this is clearly a story of turnaround for this community, where now we're replenishing stabilization funds that this council has had to use over the past several years to supplement in areas of need. I'm not certainly going to say that we won't have other needs that come up from time to time. You need those reserves to play that important role when you see fit that an expense needs to be addressed.
Thank you.
And just on the certification of free cash, I think this was the first time that came through without strings tied to it, without recommendations that you do this and that you do that. It came through as a very clean report, very impressive. Councilor Dolan.
Yeah, I just want to commend everybody, especially Tim. I mean, I'm not going to quote the number because I know he doesn't want to know what I said. But the accounts were balanced. The books were done phenomenal. I mean, we're hearing nothing but accolades from the auditors, from the state, from DOR, from people who were very critical of us several years ago. So I commend you guys for really, and Elizabeth, for getting, you know, us back in good graces and in good standing and in high regard amongst the communities that was run by. I also want to say that I ran some quick numbers, and it looks like we may have to actually adjust our caps on some of our, if we go with that plan, on some of our stabilization accounts. But it's great to see that we'll be maxed out the building maintenance stabilization account, the capital stabilization account. We'll have a nice healthy. But if we stay with the, hopefully stay with the percentages that we talked about and voted last year in the policy, which I think it's great to have some money in the bank. We've never been there before. I don't want to see us go on per se a huge spending spree, strictly because we've got 2.5, 3 good years under our belt here now. But we also, those of us who lived through this 6, 7 years ago, when all of a sudden something happens on a national, state level, and we get 9 C cuts mid-year, we don't know what's going to be happening with local aid. So I think we're in great shape, very comfortable, but I think we do need to stay on a positive track that you guys have put us on.
Thank you. Tim?
Tim? Could I just take less than 2 minutes to walk through my financial report that I put in your Dropbox on a monthly basis, because there's a few tabs here that I get a lot of questions on, and they're always here. So, not that I mind answering them, of course, but they are here. So the first tab just shows the revenue year to date. So this is through 9/30/14, because we like to keep it to the month, and we show the what it was a year ago at this point in time, and that helps identify areas that, you know, sometimes a red flag might pop up as it relates to the revenue. So we look at that closely every month. The next one is the expenditures, and it has the percentage spent over on the right, and it has all the departments here, and then at the end it has the enterprise funds as well. So I'm not going to go through it in detail, but it's there. Next I have the special revenue funds that we've talked a lot about over the last couple of years. There were a lot of funds here that needed to be cleaned up that were dragging on our free cash. We're down to 3, so these 3 in yellow are just old deficits that we're going to probably come with a motion within the next month to clear these out. By clearing them out, all you're doing is keeping them from being a negative next year when we go to certify free cash. So it's almost a no cost. And then the next tab here is the free cash. So I have this set up for this year with the 2.2 million, and I just sort of plugged in the proposed distribution based on the policy. So if you were to adopt that policy, the balance of free cash after all of that distribution would be $451,000 after putting things into the capital stabilization, general stabilization, maintenance stabilization. Then the bottom half of this, I just kind of track your town council reserve in the general fund. Anytime there's a motion to spend, I just deduct it here, and right now you see you get 2 items that passed in July and September, and one that's proposed that may potentially be passed tonight, and I will adjust that accordingly. This is just a slide that was up there. I just threw this in there because I like to put everything in one place. Next I have water sewer retained earnings. Again, it's just set up here with the current balances, so once if any of that is used, it'll show up here. I added this capital tab. This is the capital improvement plan for the general fund, and I highlighted in yellow some items that we'd like to talk about that were left off from the fiscal year FY14 budget, or are a couple of things that the town manager and others are interested in discussing with the council. I have another tab here that just shows billing due dates for real estate and for water and what the rates are, just kind of some things that people sometimes ask me, when's next water bill being sent out. It's here. And then finally I put this here, this pertains, and I'll leave this up, this pertains to the borrowing item for the 2.8 million. So I'll add tabs every month for whatever the issue is, but if there's anything you're looking for, just let me know. We can plug whatever I have in here.
Thank you, Tim. Council Mail.
I would like to think that you could put in a couple of $250 to get 2 nice second screen monitors for you and for what's her name there? Biz, yeah.
Come on, Craig. You get the TV working tonight. Come on.
Well, you know something, we're living large right now, and party night, and you guys should have the right equipment.
I'm perfectly content.
And I know you are, but if you'd be able to work that much longer and harder, stay a little later.
Any further questions for the manager, Mr. Gordon? If not, we'll move on to old business. Under old business, we had a motion postponed from the last meeting to appropriate $2,800,000 for the financing of the replacement of the age-watered mains on Cottage Hill and Pico. We had a second on that. We were under discussion. Is there any further discussion on that motion? If not, all of those in favor of that motion say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
No. Two opposed. Councilor Lettieri and Councilor Mail. The next 5 items have been, next 6 items have been, will be taken up at the next meeting after Finance Committee deals with them.
Well, no, we're going to try to waive it.
Sorry, you're going to waive everything that's under 20. All right, so go ahead, Councilor Devento.
I'd like to make a motion that the Town Council Finance Committee be released of its obligation on a hearing for the transfer of $20,000 to special, for the items transfer $20,000 to fund specialized training, increase fiscal year enterprise revenue fund, approve prior year bills of $1,957, appropriate $5,026.67 on the school building bond anticipatory note, transfer $16,800 from the capital stabilization fund to fund electrical panel. And that's my motion.
Is there a second? I'll second it. Motion made by Council.
Was that, I'm sorry, was that 2.8 million voted in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was that part of a public hearing?
Yeah, public hearing was a couple of weeks ago.
But it was continued?
No, it
Because
wasn't.
it was...
We'll take it up under public comment. It's been voted.
I had comments about it.
We have a motion to release the Finance Committee from the 6 items that Councilor Del Vento read. It's been seconded. I seconded it. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous.
All right, now I'll read the motions individually, and they will be coming from me as opposed from the committee. Motion move that the town council vote to appropriate the transfer of $20,000 from town council reserve 011110525761100 to town attorney account 0115152544350 for the purpose of funding specialized training and assistance relative to employee relations, or take any other action relative hereto.
Motion by Councilor Del Vento, seconded by Councilor Lettieri. Any discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Councilor Lettieri. Vice President Del Vento.
Another motion that will move that the town increase the FY15 Rink Enterprise Fund appropriation by $11,200 from $261,221 to $272,041 to meet the expected expenditures of the rink. The $11,200 increase is to be allocated as follows: 672551100 personnel $9,000, 67255420005 supplies and equipment $200, 672554430 contract services $2,000. Funding for this increase is from increased revenue projections. To take any other action relative hereto.
Motion by Vice President Del Vento, seconded by Councilor Lettieri. Any discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Councilor.
Motion that the town council vote to approve the payment of prior year bills in the aggregate of $1,957.67 from the current year budget for each department as noted. Cemetery supplies and equipment 0149152542005, $887.67 fiscal 2014. Board of Health supplies and equipment 0151052542005, $1,070 fiscal year 14. I take any other action relative here too.
Motion by Vice President Del Vento, seconded by Councilor Lettieri. Any discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Councilor Del Vento. Vice President Del Vento.
Motion that I move that the town raise and appropriate $5,026.67 to fund residual interest payments on school building bond anticipatory note. Amounts required to pay said interest shall be exempt from the provisions of Proposition 2.5 or take any other action relative hereto.
Second. Second by Councilor Boyashin or Lettieri? Okay, Councilor Lettieri. Any discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous.
I move that the town council vote to transfer $16,800 from the Capital Stabilization Fund 964 to fund electrical panel replacement in Town Hall, second floor, and fire panel replacement in the police station and DPW building. I take any other action relative here too.
Second. Second by Councilor Lettieri. Discussion on the motion? If not, all
I have a question.
Yes.
Was that even on the capital thing for last year? So
No, it wasn't.
Because I looked through it. This is new. What happened here?
Yes, you're correct. This is what I certainly consider to be a public safety hazard and an emergency. It's been identified that our fire panels are not code compliant, and they need to be adjusted for us to be able to continue to make improvements in these buildings, and also just in terms of some of the difficulties we've had in this building with that alarm box. It has not functioned properly, and the fire chief tells me it's got to go, it's outlived its useful life, it needs to be replaced. I'll take his word on it, that it needs to go. And we had a fire alarm yesterday in here.
So that was basically an unanticipated expenditure, that's
Yeah.
why it wasn't in the capital plan.
Yeah, right.
So just out of curiosity, we're going with what we need for right now, or what we could possibly need in like 2 or 3 years
No, we're
from
looking
now?
to upgrade to code compliant systems.
A little room for growth?
Sure.
Is that something that has to be bid out, or you've already done that?
It will, it will. Rich Safuni will be in charge of getting quotes and doing it under a contract.
Okay, we're moving, all those in favor say aye. All those in favor of moving the question, say aye. Opposed? Okay, we'll move the question. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you.
Mr. President, I have
Councilor
one
Devine.
more motion, and that is to postpone to our next meeting action on the appropriation of $854,911 from premium paid to the town on sale of bonds issued.
Motion by Councilor Devento, seconded by Councilor Lettieri. Any discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you. The motor vehicle storage town ordinance that we had been referred to planning board. The planning board came back with some recommendations, and I would like a motion to refer it back to rules and ordinances for action at the next meeting.
So moved.
Motion by Councilor Barone, sorry. Second by Councilor Lettieri. Any discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you. So 1 minute, yeah. Under appointments, we are proposing that we have 3 additional members on the scholarship committee. James Fabiano, Judith Hanlon, both as regular members, and John Dowd as an associate member. I would ask the council to endorse those.
Motion to move off there.
Second, motion by Councilor Lettieri, seconded by Councilor Del Vento to approve the president's appointments of those 3 people, and they are all, their terms all run to June 30th, 2017. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Harbor Management, we have 4 people going on to Harbor Management. Rich Honan is a regular. Davis Proctor is a regular. Davis will be on there as a planning board person. That's a requirement of the Harbor Management charter. John Kolpak, who was a full member, is coming back as an associate member, and a new associate member, Ralph Duplin. Could I have a motion to confirm those appointments?
Motion.
Motion by Councilor Lettieri, seconded by Vice President Del Vento. Any discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you. On the use of town buildings policy, could I have a motion to refer that to the town manager for further development and come back? Do I need a motion for that, or?
I'm just asking for you to...
Rules and ordinance.
Motion, yeah, okay. Could I have a motion to move it to rules and ordinance?
Yes, motion.
Okay, motion to move by Councilor Lettieri, seconded by?
I'll second it.
Councilor Barone. Any discussion on that motion to move the use of town buildings policy to rules and ordinances? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, it's unanimous. Prior year's bills. There was a prior year's bill. You want to take that one, Councilor Devento, or you want to do it?
I ask that referred to the Finance Committee.
Okay. Councilor Devento has a motion that we refer the prior year's bills of $492.60 to the Finance Committee. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Lettieri. Any discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you. Offset receipt fund. Tim, could you fill us in a little bit on that?
The offset receipt fund was set up last year for purposes of funding the plan review and permitting assistance for the building department and for the site plan review. and it needs to be renewed and voted on every year. So all we're doing is reestablishing this fund.
Okay.
I'll make the motion to, if there's no objection, vote it tonight.
Go ahead, would you make that motion? Read the motion and...
Oh,
you want...
I'm sorry, I'll read the motion. I'm sorry. I move that the offset receipts fund be renewed for fiscal 2015 in accordance with MGL Chapter 44, subsection 53E for the specific purpose of funding and operating plan review and permitting assistance for the zoning department, including site plan review in accordance with Chapter 17 of the Town and Buildings, Town and State Building Code, zoning ordinance. Revenue for said account will be generated from established plan review fees, and expenditures will be limited to associated plan review costs within an expenditure authorization limit of $20,000 to take any other action relative hereto.
So you would now like to make a motion that be voted tonight? Not be voted tonight. The Finance Committee be relieved and voted tonight? Or do you just want to vote?
There's no money involved.
All right, so we have a motion by Councilor Del Vento to accept the offset receipt fund, seconded by Councilor Boyajin. Any discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Town Council November meeting dates. The election day is November 4th, and that's also the scheduled, it's the first Tuesday of November, which is when we normally have our meeting on the 1st and 3rd. I would like a motion to waive Rule 2A and set the first meeting in November for November 5th. That would be the day after election. Could I have a motion?
Motion.
Motion by Vice President Del Vento, seconded by Councilor Calla. Is there any discussion of the motion? But basically what it's doing is it's taking the Tuesday night meeting and moving it to Wednesday because Tuesday is election day. And the November 18th will stay as scheduled. If there's no discussion on the motion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Public comment. Mr. Rosner.
I just have a few things. The first one is when the identify $800 and some odd thousand in reserves of the sewer and water, these enterprise funds. I don't think that anybody here should ever be patting themselves on the back as being a result of good government. I'm not going to go into the reasons why, but it is not good government, it's poor government. But that's old news, and that's the last comment I'll ever have about it. So nobody here should take any kind of a compliment about having that money in there.
I do.
Secondly, earlier when I was home watching the show, President Gill, you stated that you were instructed that the council is not to reply during public comment. Now, that's evidently legal advice, but you've got to read the law. Public comment, whether or not you want to respond to me or anybody, is completely your choice. It is not anybody to instruct you. Obviously, if I'm going to have an opinion on collective bargaining that's being negotiated, the council would never have any comment. I can understand that kind of stuff. But when it's just basic stuff in town business, you have a right to. You have a right not to, and you have a right to. But to be instructed that you can't respond as a council is wrong. Thirdly, you mentioned a letter that was directed to me from town council, Koppelman and Page. This is the letter that I got from the Attorney General's office. I'm going to just, as you read, I will read. Because you did not receive a response, because I did not receive a response from Koppelman Page, because you did not receive a response from the council within the 14 business days required under the open meeting law, it is our opinion that the circumstances warrant an extension for good cause, for my benefit, to respond and appeal or whatever. So, but you have to understand, within 30 days, Koppelman and Page has given you a response to an open meeting law complaint that I filed. I gave you a response. I sent it to Koppelman and Page and also to the managing partner of Koppelman and Page. The response that I sent the letter to you folks on the council was, Koppelman and Page didn't even refer to the appropriate open meeting law complaint that I filed. They gave you a legal opinion on something totally irrelevant, and they billed you for it. Now, this most recent response you got from Koppelman Page on another open meeting law complaint I filed. Koppelman Page again references an erroneous and incorrect open meeting law complaint that I filed. This is the second time in 30 days your legal counsel, at which we're all paying for, is responding to open meeting law complaints and referencing the wrong case. I have never seen anything like this in my life. I'm in the midst of giving a response to you. But this is the kind of thing you have to look out for. Because you get legal advice does not mean you are getting good legal advice. And I'll leave it at that. So, but as far as the last thing is, when I watched the last meeting on the $2.8 million bond, I think Council Mail wanted to add to it, and there was going to be discussion, so. But that was part of a public hearing, so I said, well, let me find out what the final thing is before I have anything to say about it, and add a public hearing. So it just came now, it was quiet, it was voted in. I didn't even know it was being voted in. So I like to know when, if the public hearing is for citizens to be heard, and you continue it to another meeting with a possibility of adding to it, it's not a final product for me as a citizen to make comment on. So now that it comes to a final comment, I have no way to speak on it. And it's wrong. I don't understand why it's shut off now. It's voted in, and I haven't had no chance to say a thing about it. Because I anticipated a different version of the original public notice. And it didn't come out that way, but I didn't know. So how can I possibly have a public comment or comment on it at a public hearing? I'm shut off. I'd like to know why. And if I can speak, I'd love to be able to comment now.
Is there any further public comment? Thank you, Mr. Osborne. Yes, Ms. Capuccio.
Hi, Kathleen Capuccio, Precinct 2. I just wanted to remind citizens that there will be the MWRA public forum tomorrow evening at 7 o'clock at Deer Island. This is a meeting that will be, it's being hosted by the MWRA on behalf of the Winthrop Citizens Action Committee, which is myself at this point, Tom Manning, John and Noxtasio, Dave Johnson, and John Battagliano. We really welcome any citizens, or anyone that wants to come. You just don't have to be a citizen of Winthrop. Anyone to come. In my talks with Fred Lasky, the agenda is an update on co-digestion, discussions regarding security at the island, an additional fishing pier and parking, and we'll end with a question and answer period. Again, we really encourage all residents to come to hear what the issues are. There are current, people that have issues with regard to the MWRA and the operation of the island. They may not be issues that directly affect you, but they affect the town. So we really welcome everyone to come. You don't just have to be a Point Shirley resident. The current trucking route, for example, and this is not with regard to co-digestion, but just in general, when trucks come in, is throughout a good portion of the town. The MWRA, I believe, is either the second or third largest, I don't know what the right word would be, contributor, or someone that brings revenue into this town via the mitigation agreement. Mitigation is ending, the mitigation is expiring soon. And this is really a time where your voice can be heard, questions can be answered, and we would hope that you would come. Also, in conclusion, as I've stated before, but I'd like to state it again because I've heard from councilors that they don't think that there is a committee. There is a committee. The committee is called, again, the Winthrop Citizens Action Committee. At various public meetings, I won't speak on behalf of anyone else, have told people that there is a committee. Our main focus is on the MWRA and the operation of the Deer Island facility. I know I've said this on at least 3 occasions, as well as in print. There is a committee. Let that be known. We have met, we continue to meet, and as I've again stated many times, I welcome, John welcomes, and those of us on the committee welcome any resident that wants to become involved. We would love to have you. We have a Facebook page. Again, a lot of people communicate now on Facebook. We have a Facebook page called Winthrop Concerned Citizens. Right now, I want to say we have around 600 likes, which means 600 people that view the page and what our updates are. We put updates on there regarding whether they be traffic, issues, whether it be, a stop sign being put in, whether it's concerns with trucking, information on co-digestion I posted on there, just different updates. So again, we welcome anyone. We welcome anyone to get involved. This is a citizens group. It is not affiliated, with the council. However, we welcome anyone on the council to provide any input that they would like to with regard to their concerns about the MWRA or the operations at the island. It's just, again, I believe, and I know Dawn believes, that the MWRA and the operation of Deer Island is a town issue. It's not just a Point Shirley issue. And in conclusion, I would like to address a public information request that I had put in last week. I had put in a public information request with regard to any, I don't know the exact verbiage, any correspondence that was between the MWRA coming to the town council and or town manager, or the other way, the town council or town manager going to the MWRA. I asked for that request for one specific reason. I asked for that request because I emailed the town manager and this entire town council and asked if the town council or town manager had ever received any reports from the MWRA or from Speaker DeLeo's office with regard to Speaker DeLeo at our, I think it was March 26th public forum. Speaker DeLeo, thankfully, was able to assist the citizens in getting co-digestion put on hold. And in my opinion, without that, the citizens, and without Speaker DeLeo, without question, there would be trucking right now at Deer Island. That is of no council to the credit, no credit to the council whatsoever. That is absolute credit to the citizens, and that's credit to Speaker DeLeo. So when I asked if any reports had come, because Speaker DeLeo, when he had asked at that meeting for further documentation and reports to be done for any environmental or impacts to the town, Fred Lasky, I don't know if he said yes, but nodded that they were going to do that. So I emailed the council and the town manager and said, hi, has anyone received any reports? Has there been any correspondence? What's the status? And I did not receive a direct yes or no from anyone on the council as to that. That was a direct question that I asked, and I didn't receive an answer. I did receive. I spoke to, I want to put this out there, I did speak to Mr. Mail. He said to me, oh, please call me, which he has always done, and I did. We had a conversation on the phone. I spoke to Mr. Verone. I did receive an email from Councilor Boyajian. I spoke to Mr. Gill. I spoke just recently to Mr. Del Vento. But I did not receive a yes, we have received reports, or no, we haven't. There was no, I didn't have any game in asking that question. I was just trying to do my research to find out, have we received any reports? I put in the Freedom of Information request because I didn't receive a yes or no. I have since heard that there was maybe some political collusion going on, and somehow I was not really working admirably or working respectfully in somehow taking other people's words and asking for these documents. I drafted that email. If it sounded legal for one reason, because I've been in the legal business for 17 years. Never did I see someone else's public Freedom of Information request, asking for, I guess, similar documents that I asked for. And I was told that people on the council had also discussed that my email and my Freedom of Information request was similar to that of someone else's. I find that offensive. I find it highly disrespectful. I have worked and will continue to work on these MWRA issues as a citizen and a dedicated citizen of this town. And if the town council does not want to be involved or directly answer questions, that's within your purview to do so. But please, do not disrespect the people behind the scenes that are working and have worked.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
Is there any further public comment? Ms. Manning?
I have, Don Manning, Precinct 3. I have a couple questions about the vote earlier for the $2.8 million. I understand that we have $2.2 million in free cash. What I'm wondering is, where is that money coming from to pay for this overhaul? Because what I understand is that there was no $750,000 that Mr. Callis stated would be needed for Mr. Mayo's additional funding for the sidewalks. I didn't hear any of that go on, so I get that you only voted for the 2.8. So where's the $2.8 million coming from? If we have $2.2 million, does that mean of that free cash, are we taking that and we only need to come up with $600,000?
That was already addressed at the public hearing with the source of the money, but it'll be solidified at a future meeting. Right now, while we did not vote the source tonight.
Okay, so I believe I also heard, whether it was the town manager or the CFO, I believe he said there could be a one-time revenue increase. Does that mean the town and the residents should expect an increase in their water or sewer or taxes to fund this? Everybody's shaking their head no. Because, you know, we haven't been hit with the money for the school and the high school and the middle school, that tax increase yet. So I'm just kind of wondering, should we expect a double increase when that funding comes through along with this 2.8? Because I was looking at the slides and I was trying to take notes and keep along. And, you know, I'm pretty proud of the free cash myself. But what I'm wondering is where that free cash, you know, came from, since last year in September of 2013, Mr. McKenna, along with the CFO here, and I believe it was Mr. Caller, and somebody from the IRS, and a whole bunch of other concerned citizens sat at the middle school, which is now high school, and we talked about how if we didn't increase our water and sewer bills, Mr. McKenna justified it by saying the DPW would have lost half the staff. So I'm trying to figure out, did that free cash, which is $2.2 million, come from our water and sewer rate increase?
No.
Okay, do me a favor, Mrs. Manning. Put your concerns, send them to the manager, and we'll address them at the next meeting.
I would love to, but he has a habit of not getting back to me unless I address it to the whole council with emails, sir.
Do that. Address it to the whole council, to Mr. McKenna with a CC to the council. And would you feel comfortable, Mr. McKenna, answering the questions during your report at the next meeting?
Is he going to get back to me within 3 or 4 weeks' time?
At the next council meeting, I said?
I will try to do that.
So, but don't, he needs it in advance, not
I
Tuesday
understand.
afternoon.
I work 50 hours a week too, sir, so I get that.
I don't mean to wisecrack. I'm just saying that we need it in advance for him to prepare the information, and we'll address it at the next meeting.
Well, he gets paid 6 figures, I would think he would go.
That doesn't have anything to do with your concern. Your concern is you have a question on funds.
Well, a lot of it was up on that screen, and I was trying to
What
pay
anybody
attention.
makes for money has nothing to do with your concern on this particular question.
I'm just trying to point out his job and what he said a year ago.
And in public comment, we do not discuss personalities.
I wasn't discussing personalities, I was discussing the job of the
Thank you.
town.
I have a comment.
Go ahead, Councilor.
Sorry, so I have a couple of things. Before we have our next meeting is our election. And the reason I asked Steve to stay is because I am seeing a lot of information out there. So I would actually like to ask a question which I hope you could answer in public comment. And it's just a claim that I have seen in an advertisement. that the bottle bill, which I believe is question 2, does that affect the town in our contract if there was to be a bottle bill which would take those recyclings out of our trash? Would that affect our contract in any way?
No, again, we don't own tonnage, it's all capital.
All right.
So no, it would have no effect on it.
The reason I bring that up is there is a claim that is out there in an advertisement that says cities and towns should be careful because it's part of your revenue stream, and I just wanted to answer that because I'm testing about the thought myself. I know it's public comment and I'm not supposed to answer a question, but that being the case, I would like to state that I did in fact tell Ms. Capuccio that I have not received any information from the MWRA regarding this, and I had that clearly in an hour conversation with her. I do want to bring up something because I know a lot of people weren't there last night. I think Tim was. There was probably the most fantastic discussion at the school committee last evening on the coming school, and the gentleman that's the principal there, and he broke down his academic program vis-a-vis the test scores and where he felt they were and how he was going to handle those with statistics and studies and data analysis of students. And if you didn't get a chance to see that the other day, I suggest everybody, do you broadcast those meetings? I suggest people take a look at it. It was at the beginning of the meeting. He does an incredible job of laying out a scenario of how a middle school can look at its statistical figures that they get from the MassCast, address them down to the individual levels, and they now have 85 kids in their Khan Academy. Kids are getting tested to understand where they stand and immediate remediation for those areas. Kids who are doing better are instructed to take classes in creative thinking and writing, and I was very, very impressed. And the one thing I mentioned, and I throw it out here for the comment, is that they received a $10,000 gift that we all noticed, that we all mentioned a couple of weeks ago, and they were able to buy 29 Chromebooks, which filled one cart, and they feel they need more. And I know that I would look very, very favorably on somehow using some of our free cash money to increase their technology by purchasing. I would put, whatever it is, another 2 or 3 carts worth of information, so that guy that's got a good plan there can advance his plan, and then we can measure that plan because it's all data driven, all statistically driven, and I encourage everybody to take a look at that meeting on WCAT whenever you get it there. So
thank you, Councilor. That was a very impressive presentation.
It was
amazing.
amazing.
A very positive presentation,
yeah.
And he's a very enthusiastic guy. And he says that he believes that that his plans will work.
It was great.
They also gave a good report on the new high school, middle school, that it's on schedule. They've been driving the piers, and they're going to start to pour the foundation, and they feel very comfortable that they're on schedule. I had been asked by Judy Van Koyman to again talk about and mention that her festival is at the Senior Center. The Fall Festival is at the Senior Center this Saturday, the 25th. There are tables of stuff that you can buy and raffles and so forth and so on, and she encourages people to go. We do have 2 vacancies that have been advertised on the town website. There's an appointment for the unexpired term of on the Board of Assessors and an unexpired term on the Northeast Regional Vocational Technical School. Anybody else have anything on the public relations? If not, motion. Motion by Vice President Del Vento, seconded by Councilor Lettieri to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous.